Good thing these cars are fast. Man, it's dark in here. We need lights. Lights. Ha! Here they are. Now that's better. Oh, and by the way, hi, I am Saviano, and welcome to the Flying Kick channel. Released in April 1993, Cadillacs and Dinosaurs is arguably one of the most well-known beat-em-ups from Capcom, and we could easily say that this is one of the most popular brawlers, if not the most, from the vast catalog of the former beat-em-up giant. Great OSTs, snap combat, and most importantly, huge dinosaurs walking around the screen while you fight the bad guys were more than enough to make this game a timeless classic. But why it's so cherished and well remembered even by people who don't really play video games nowadays? Well, that's exactly what we will find out in this video. Cadillacs and Dinosaurs' history is not a secret to anyone. I believe most of you know about the game's origin as a small and independent comic book. But let's take a quick look just to put things in context. Cadillacs and Dinosaurs was born in 1986 under the name Xenozoic as an independent story that was first published in December of that same year in an anthology comic book series called Death Rattle that was published in the US from the 70s up to the 90s. In the story we are introduced to Jack and Hannah, but there's no Mess or Mustafa here, and there's no connection to the rest of the story. It is almost a standalone tale, although it contextualizes some things in the plot that otherwise you wouldn't know. But weirdly enough, the comic series treats it as if it never existed. The official comic book series came less than 2 months after this original publication in February 1987, and it lasted until 1996, having released 14 issues. The comic was extremely successful and spawned games, action figures, candy bars, and even a tabletop RPG. The most well known from those, aside from the games, is obviously the cartoon series, which aired in the 90s for only 1 season. The series, from what I could find, had an unfortunate time schedule on Saturday mornings, making it easy to miss for the kids at the time. Some of my US friends told me that back in the day they didn't hear a word about the show. The cartoon followed the comics, but the story was toned down to be more palatable to kids, removing a lot of the mature content and all the explicit violence. You know how cartoons work, right? The enemies always flees and never dies, while in the comics we will find a lot of people teared down by dinos. I still have to read the comics, I only read 2 issues so far, but I watched the whole show and it's okay, I guess. It is a typical 90s cartoon with an environmental message to the kids, not that different from Captain Planet, but with dinos, which make everything way more cooler. One curiosity that I almost forgot to add is that Maz is not in the cartoon, but he is in the comics. Why? I have no idea, but since I had to do something with this information, well, here it is. Cadillacs and Dinosaurs the game was released in April 22nd, 1993 for arcades, coming in a nice cabinet for 3 players. The game also came in a 2-player cabinet, but for some reason I can't find any image of it. I mean, you can find 2 players all around the web, but I tried to find a cabinet and had no luck. I remember playing one here in Brazil back in the day, but since most of our machines here were just the board inside a custom-made cabinet, I'm not the best person to confirm that. The game was the most popular in Japan in the 2 weeks after its release, and was the 9th most popular arcade in Japan that year. The media at the time really enjoyed the game, with Computers and Video Games awarding it an 89 score. I was able to find other publications from that time, like the Italian Computer Pio Videogiochi, which called the game a bomb in the most positive way possible. The French publication Console Plus complemented the game's moves variety, which for them made each playthrough a very fun experience. It is not a surprise the game was so popular. In 1993, dinosaurs were all the rage, no pun intended, and with the first Jurassic Park movie a couple of months away from the game's release, it's no surprise that this one was very successful. Cats and Dinos have an interesting story. Different from your typical rescue the girl or save the city, Here you fight against a group of poachers that are hunting dinosaurs in the 26th century for no purpose. While the theme is not that different from Growl, meaning you are here to protect the poor and helpless 18-tons creatures, here the bad guy's objectives is way more sinister. The villain, Dr. Simon Fessenden? Dr. Simon is trying to create a new species, a hybrid between men and dinosaurs to replace the human race. While, as I said, it is your typical 90s affair, getting acquainted with the other media makes the game more interesting to play since you will know better the motivations of each characters and villain in the game. In my opinion, the theme and story of the game are top-notch. Coming at a time when most games were about dark cities and gangs, Cats and Dinos brought something new and exciting to the table. The dinosaurs were actually part of the gameplay and they were able to change your whole strategy in a blink of an eye. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. Let's first talk about the graphics. It may be a surprise for you, but I don't think Cadillacs and Dinosaurs is the best looking game around. While it doesn't mean I think it looks bad, not at all, it wasn't the best that 1993 had to offer. Sure, the graphics are colorful with characters that, while not as big as something you would see in Violent Storm or even Final Fight, are not as small as Vendetta or Captain America. The sprites are about the same size as the ones in the Punisher, but I don't think they are as detailed as this one. The backgrounds in Cadillacs are a little washed out when compared to other games at the time, without the bright and vivid colors that you would find in other Capcom games. Despite both games being released at the same time, the Punisher was released a couple of months earlier, and Cadillacs ended up looking a little bit more outdated. But as I said, it doesn't mean the game looks bad. Even with better looking games at the time, Cats and Dinos is an eye-catching game. The number of enemies on the screen shaking with each explosion, the huge enemies casually turning you to pieces, and of course, the dinosaurs. This is obviously the thing that grabbed the attention of every kid back in the day. These were probably the biggest enemies you ever faced in a beaten up to that day, and they can easily put you in a tight spot. They are big and very detailed, especially compared to other characters. You won't find them too often, but every time they appear in the game, they easily steal the show. Cadillacs and Dinos weren't the best looking game around, but it was surely one that made a ton of kids gather around the machine to appreciate that weird Jurassic future. When it comes to the sound, well, there's a lot of good things here. First, the effects are all spot on. I mean, this is a Capcom game and they know how to create good sound effects. The punches, weapons effects, barrels and, well, everything breaking really adds to the overall feeling of the game. Some of the sounds can be a little muffled, especially the guns, but that's not really a problem here since everything else will be so loud and happens so quickly that you barely have time to notice it. There are also some nice screams and grunts from your characters and enemies, and you even get a few lines spoken after beating a level. While there isn't a lot to listen to here, Capcom did a great job, especially when killing the bosses. Despite being made for the CPS-1, a board that at the time was completing 5 years, the games released for it were nothing but stellar, especially when it came to the music. Cadillacs and Dinosaurs have probably one of the best soundtracks for an arcade beaten up, period. The OST is phenomenal and something that I really recommend you to look after. I guess I will upload it here after this video is up. The tunes fit perfectly with the game's action and even think that Konami has usually way better music than what Capcom used to create, it is hard to rival what you get here. Check out some of my favorite ones. If you ask around for a list of the top 5 beaten ups for arcades, chances are that you will find Cadillacs and Dinosaurs in most of them, if not all. And more often than not, on the top 3. As we saw moments ago, the game was a huge success back in the day, and part of this success followed the game up to this day. There is also a mystique towards it, since this is probably a game that is lost forever in the depths of copyright laws. But we will talk about that later. But why Cadillacs and Dinosaurs is deemed so good by the fans? What makes this beaten up different from the others, especially since 1992 and 1993 weren't bad years for the genre at all? I mean, look at the competition. At first, the game does not seem very different from others. You start the game and have to pick one of the 4 characters. Jack Terrence, who is your all-around guy, at least according to his stats. While this type of character is recommended for beginners, in this game Jack would be more appropriate for veteran players, since he isn't the best choice when fighting bosses. Not that he is not capable of beating them, but it will be hard if you don't know the ins and outs of them. He's a more technical character than the others, and using him properly can be a bit tricky. Hannah Dundee is one of the few female characters that aren't the fast character in the bunch. While she is fast, her main perk is the ability to stab enemies with a knife multiple times, instead of one like the others. She has a shorter reach than the others, and while this isn't a problem most of the time in the game, it can be a little problematic with some bosses, but overall she's a great pick for those who are starting the game. Mustafa Cairo is probably the best character in game. He is the fastest, very strong, and has a great reach. His specialty is the flying kick, not that one. And this move can even break the game a little, as we will check in a few moments. He is the best character for those who are starting the game, because honestly, I don't think he has any weaknesses. And finally, Mezo Bredovic, who is the big guy in the game. Slow, strong, the typical grappler. Although you won't be pile-driving foes here, unfortunately. Besides being capable of dealing 25% more damage than the others, Mez also can take a bit more punish than the rest of the group, having a bit more health than his friends. Against bosses, Mez is probably the best choice, dealing a ton of extra damage and quickly depleting their health bars. It's a good selection of characters with some good variety between them that can fit all types of players. It's interesting to notice here that while you have 4 characters to pick, only 3 people can play the game at the same time. It was common for Capcom to keep the number of players limited to 3, and while there's no official reason for this choice, I believe this was chosen to avoid very crowded scenes like you can find in Vendetta or Captain Commando when playing with 4 people. Not to mention, for a regular arcade machine, 3 people were way more comfortable to play than 4. Cadillacs and Dinosaurs is, expectedly, not a big game. You have 7 levels to beat, and they are relatively short, taking anything between 40 to 50 minutes to beat. The boss for each level is your typical big guy, with some of them being pretty annoying, like slicing his boomerangs. I hate this guy. Your enemies are the typical Capcom cannon fodder, and while they are not as interesting or remarkable as the ones in Final Fight, they are pretty cool to fight with. And there's also, of course, the dinosaurs. They come in 2 flavors: orange, which means they are furious and will crush everyone on their path, and green, meaning they are calm and just want to take care of their lives. You will find dinos in both colors around, but you must pay attention to the green ones because they can be hurt by enemies and become orange. You can avoid that by beating the enemies before they piss off the dinos and save yourself a lot of trouble. Unfortunately, there aren't too many dinos to see here. You will find 5 of them, and in a very sporadic fashion. Here we have a Tyrannosaurus, a Raptor, a Triceratops, an unidentifiable sauropod that can step on you or your enemies, and a Pterodactyl that hovers above your head trying to poke you. It is a nice addition to the game that momentarily changes your priorities, but unfortunately, I don't think it was well explored. We could have more variety and more interaction with them, since both in the comic book and the cartoon, the dinos were very prominent. But aside from the dinos, what Cadillacs and Dinosaurs made that was different from other games at the time? Well, I'm glad I asked. First of all, Cads and Dinos have a lot of moves for each character, especially when compared to other games. Not only do you have your basic combo, grab, flying kick and special, but you also have at your disposal some moves that aren't taught in the game. For starters, you have 3 different flying kicks. You have your regular one, a dive kick which you can unleash by pressing down while in the air, and finally a running flying kick which is more powerful than your regular one. If you press up, down and attack, you can unleash a unique move for each character that can be very handful in some situations. You can also jump backwards and use a running attack that is also unique for each one of the characters. One cool thing here is that if you're playing with more people, you can unleash a team move by stopping on top of the other character and waiting a couple of seconds. One of the characters will throw the other and will also grant you a small window of invisibility. Another detail here that the game won't teach you is that Hannah and Mustafa can both use wall jumps. While this amount of moves is not really something unique, Turtles in Times had a lot of moves 2 years prior, in Cats and Dinos things are a little bit more refined and player-friendly. You see, while most of your moves are great and fun to use, what really makes this game feel good is your jab. Here, your jab has an inhuman reach that is way bigger than what you would expect from most games. Take a look at this sprite comparison of the basic jab from different games to make it more clear. As you can see, in Cats and Dinos, the arm of the characters stand a lot, making it easy to hit your enemy while keeping you safe. And not only that, but your jabs are pretty fast, make the game extremely dynamic, even on later levels. The game has also some excellent hitboxes, so if you miss a punch, you can only blame yourself. The only game that I analyzed that has a reach as big as this one is The Punish, released a couple of months prior, but even so, it didn't have as many moves as Cadillacs. And you need all the speed, moves and reach when facing waves up to 9 enemies on the screen. Yes, things in this game can get crowded and fast, so you have to make good use of your arsenal of moves to control the crowd. And sure, you won't be left with only your fist in this game. Here you have a ton of weapons to use, like the traditional knives and bats, but also dynamites, grenades and lots of firearms. Pistols, shotguns, submachine guns, rifles, machine guns, and even a bazooka, which will spawn when you enter an ongoing game or continue. Oh, and you will also find clips to restore your sparse ammunition. The weapons in this game are pretty good, even the rod, the simplest of the weapons, has multiple uses, being able to break and throw into your enemies. Sure, not everything is perfect here, you can easily exploit the game by spamming your running attack, especially using Mustafa, making even the more annoying boss encounter a breeze. Talking about the bosses, the variety is good, but you will find some of the same bosses here and there with a different skin and being more annoying than the previous version. While there are some cool bosses to fight here, they are not as remarkable as the bosses in games like Final Fight or Vendetta. Oh, and one thing I must add, Cadillacs and Dinosaurs has one of the most fancy foods you will ever find in a garbage bin. Check this out. A whole lobster, sushi, egg salad, pie. I mean, this is the fanciest garbage ever. Overall, Cadillacs and Dinosaurs is truly a great game. Up to 1993, you would be hard-pressed to find a technically superior beat-'em up with that many offers when it comes to moves and weapons to use. For an arcade game, Cats and Dinos is not that hard, and beating it with one credit is completely possible after getting used to the patterns of your enemies and, most importantly, the bosses. Modern games could learn a thing or two with this one, being the amazing and satisfying basic combos with their huge reach, the variety brought by Dinos, or even the great selection of weapons. The faster pace is also pretty good, making the game very dynamic, forcing you to move fast from one scene to another, never wasting too much time in the same place. Unfortunately, this is a game that hardly will be available for anything else other than the arcades. The IP is trapped inside a copyright nightmare with many companies holding a piece of the pie. For example, the brand name Cadillacs and Dinosaurs belongs to General Motors from all companies, and the characters belong some to the comic book publishers and some to the cartoon series broadcaster. And there's also the original author Mark Schultz, who probably has some royalties to receive, making this one a pretty expensive license. It is a pity, but the game is far from lost since you can easily find a ROM and emulate it with perfection on your favorite device. You can even play some multiplayer matches on Fightcade, so this is a great time to play this game. If you never played it, do yourself a favor and go play it now. This is truly one of the best beaten ups around. There is also a game with the same name for Sega Saturn, Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, the second Cataclysm, but it's a rail shooter, and the further you get from this thing, the better. This game is terrible. And that's it for the video. I hope you guys enjoyed this extended look at this great game, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't yet. If you want to check out more stuff about the game like flyers, the cabinets, OST and some of the sprites, check out my site, the link will be in the description. Other than that, I hope you all have an awesome day, and remember, keep it up.
Ah!